Today marks 45 days since we handed in our super complaint to the Financial Conduct Authority, where we're calling on the regulator to tackle the problems that we can see in the home and travel insurance market. I'm Lucia and this is the Which Money Podcast. Now, you might remember the podcast that we did on the day that we handed in the super complaint.
Please mind the gap between the train and the platform.
Now, we're just walking up to FCA head office now, and with us we've got a collection of placards to really illustrate the stories of those that have been affected by the inaction from the home and travel insurance industry. So some of the placards, we've got one here, anxiety and stress doesn't even touch what we went through. Got another one here, stress is not a strong enough word. And then a third one, frustration and upset continues to take a toll. And these placards really just illustrate some of the really difficult stories of the people that we've heard from.
It's a huge step, and essentially it's a legal tool we used on behalf of all of the consumers who have been sold insurance policies that don't end up delivering as expected and experienced claims handling services levels that aren't up to scratch. Now we're 45 days in and we're checking in on where it's got to and what needs to happen next. And for this, I'm very happy to say that we're joined by Katie Alpin, Head of Strategic Insight here at Which. Hello, Katie.
Hello, Lucia.
Hello, well, thank you so much for joining us. Now, shortly we're going to be joined by Kaja Cordwell to hear how her insurer let her down. But first, Katie, let's catch up and rewind for a moment. So can you remind us then, what is a super complaint all about?
So the super complaint is all about serious problems in the home and travel insurance market. I mean, it's worth saying this is the first super complaint which has issued despite having these legal powers in nearly 10 years. It's only the second super complaint the Financial Conduct Authority has ever received from any organisation with the powers to send them. So
the second, that's
ever.
Really shocking, isn't it?
It's really difficult to say just how big a deal this is, how seriously worried we have to be, how much we have exhausted every other option before taking this step, you know. They don't like it. It disrupts the work they're doing and they have important work to do. So we don't do it unless we think there really isn't any other option. And we just run out of road here. So my team and I have been investigating what's been going on in the home and travel insurance markets for well over a year now. We found so many problems. We knew the FCA were working on these things. We tried to talk to them about it. We raised our concerns again and again. And we just weren't satisfied with the steps that they were taking, you know, that we're still seeing the same problems we were seeing a decade ago in this market. So it really is a bit of a nuclear option because they have to respond by law to us within 90 days. Well, we're halfway through today and that's exciting. We're waiting to see what they come up with at the end of it. And alongside that, you know, we're thinking about what else could we do as Which and what could insurers do, their industry bodies. What can all of us do to try to tackle these really serious problems that are making people's lives worse at a time when they need help?
So you've talked about some of the problems. Can you, in a nutshell, start to explain some of them to us?
It's always dangerous to ask a researcher to do something in a nutshell, isn't it? But I'll do my best. So we see broadly three types of problems here. The first are problems when someone has made a claim on their insurance product with how their insurer treats them once they put that claims request in. So we're hearing about people being asked the same questions again and again and again, facing inordinate delays in what should sometimes be quite straightforward processes, in just not being treated with the sensitivity that they deserve when, let's not forget, whenever you're making an insurance claim, you're doing it because something's gone wrong. People don't do this for fun, you know, it's not a hobby. And it's when things go wrong with that situation, you know, people are left out of pocket, but also they face enormous emotional and psychological harm, frustration, distress. That feeling of not being believed is what a lot of people tell us about. And that really worries me. It's not good enough. Some of the problems with that claims handling stem from the way policies are being sold as well, which is a second problem. So the claims acceptance rates across home and travel, but particularly home, particularly buildings only policies, are just really low. You know, we've got 63% of buildings only policy claims being accepted. That means nearly 4 in 10 are being rejected. I don't know about you, but when I buy an insurance policy, I expect it to pay out more than 63% of the time on average.
Sure.
So some of that might be about the policies. Some of it's about the behaviour of firms when they get the claims. Some of it's about what people understand is covered by their claims when they buy them. And again, that's one where all these firms, according to existing regulation, I'm not asking for anything new here, according to the rules that already exist, should be doing a better job at making sure people understand what they're buying. And then there's also something about the way that the regulator, the Financial Conduct Authority, are behaving. So, this is a big regulator. They have written rules that I think are quite reasonable a lot of the time. We don't have a problem here with what is written in the rule book. The problem is they're not enforcing any of it. And over time, if you're a good firm that plays by the rules, but your competitors are getting away with not doing that, it reduces your incentive to play by the rules, right? And so you get this downward spiral across the whole industry.
So we've got this rule book then, and you've kind of started to answer this already, I think, but what is it then that we actually want the FCA to do?
So 3 things we'd like to see happen. The first is the FCA need to make sure that firms stick to the rules we've set. We think that means enforcement action. So asking firms seriously and formally to do things differently where standards aren't being met. We also think because there's some complexity going on here about what people understand and how products are being sold and some governance issues, they need to take a big step back. They need to do what's called a market study and look at kind of how things are working in this market to get to the root causes of some of those problems too. And we also think there are potentially some issues here with some of the, not FCA rules, but the laws that the government writes. Things that are about kind of what protection consumers have if they make a mistake when they're buying insurance in terms of the information they share with their insurer. Those laws need to be looked at as well to make sure that they are working with regulation and that they're working for both firms and consumers.
I suppose we've all been there, haven't we? When we're going through a comparison website and we're talking about, what our roof's made out of or something like that. And, I'm not sure. Like I was doing it for my parents recently and so many of the questions, I hate to say it, but it felt a little bit like guesswork.
How far is the nearest big tree from your house? Is it more than less than 5 metres? How near is the body
Who
of water?
actually goes out and measures that? I don't know.
What type of locks do you have? I haven't got a clue when I work for which, and people are getting caught out sometimes on those kind of questions with home, particularly disclosing medical conditions with travel insurance is really hard. What do you count? If you've been to the doctor but they didn't diagnose anything, what are you meant to do? Personal example, I'm expecting a baby at the minute. My first baby was a little bit premature. We went on holiday a few months ago and there's nowhere on that form to say, well, I'm pregnant and my first baby was premature. I think you'd want to know that, insurer. But if you're going through a comparison website and there's nowhere to put it, let's face it, all our lives are busy. We just move on, don't we? What are you going to do? Ring them and try to sort it yourself? It's just not realistic. So the hurdles we're having to jump through to try to get this right are really difficult. There are 2 sides to this story. There are good reasons why insurers might want that information, why they want it to be accurate. For the most part, they want to sell us the products we need at the right price. So it's process issues. Those should be sortable, but I think we need the regulator to step up to make the whole industry do it at once. Otherwise, the insurers that try to do a good job will lose out at the expense of those that don't. And that's not going to work, is it? So
we are talking about this then 45 days in. Can you just talk us through why that's important, how many days the FCA has to respond, and, whether they have responded yet?
Not yet. We're all waiting here at Which HQ with sort of on tenterhooks. So by law, the FCA have to respond within 90 days. Because we are gluttons for punishment, that means they have to respond to us by the day before Christmas Eve. But in the meantime, we're really thinking about what might they come back with. And I think the other thing that I'm really thinking about is what else can we do? Who else can solve some of these problems that we're talking about in this market? Because a super complaint often is the start of a policy change process, not the end. If I look back to the last super complaint we did here, which was in 2016, and it was about authorised push payment fraud, which I'm sure many of your listeners are very familiar with. I'm sure we've talked about it on the podcast before. That thing where you are tricked by a fraudster into making a payment from your bank account. We made a super complaint like in 2016. We eventually got the law changed. It took us the best part of a decade to get the law changed about that. So I think it is important to realise that, this is a big step, but these things, the wheels of policy can move very, very slowly indeed. So there'll be more work to do.
I'm really, really pleased that we have Kaja with us. Thank you so much for joining us, Kaja, to bring it down to earth and hear your experience. So Kaja's house was badly damaged in a fire in January 2024, and you've spent months going back and forth with your insurer, haven't you? I mean, can you take us back over what's happened, from January until now?
Yes, however, we are now month 20 in the fight with them, and the story is nowhere near finished, so it might be a bit of a long one. And our house actually wasn't badly damaged. It was barely damaged. We had a fire machine catch fire. It burned for all of 10 minutes. The fire brigade were very prompt. It really didn't seem like a big deal. And it wasn't. The fire was fine. The insurance and LV, who we are with, are the problem, and the trauma and the distress. They are the ones that are trying to destroy our family. The fire we could have dealt with probably much better without them. Initially, the insurance representative came out. She said it's a small building project, basically to fix the kitchen and to fix all the water damage. As you can imagine, the fire brigade comes in. Their job is to put it out. It's not to look after your floors. So we had smoke damage to everywhere, water damage to all of downstairs, and actual fire damage to the kitchen. She advised us that it will take them about 3 months from starting works to getting us back home. We also got private advice that was exactly the same. Small building project, 3 months, you'll be in no time. And we were naive enough to believe them, I guess. So initially we had a lot of drama with the insurance trying to put me, then 9 months pregnant, our dog, our toddler, in a pub. Who knows for how long? We were told this is an emergency accommodation situation, but we have been told by people on Facebook that actually that is never an emergency situation for a few days. If you go in, you're stuck. So we initially got an Airbnb, stayed with neighbors. I found us a house locally because the insurance housing team wasn't able to actually offer us anything. But the insurance were happy. They signed, off on the rental agreement. We rented a house. Was supposed to be 3 months. I gave birth 2 weeks after the fire. The baby had a lot of health conditions. So the first 2 months we were kind of in and out of the hospital. We were chasing insurance, but we didn't feel that they're being too slow or anything, right? Like we had bigger issues on our hands. However, months went on and they have not had builders appointed. They have not done any cleaning. Since our washing machine was serviced about 2 weeks before the fire, we were told this is now a potentially criminal investigation. We cannot walk into the house. Me being pregnant with a newborn, absolutely not. We were told all the things for the children will be written off. They can't accept liability for, stuffed animals being covered in soot and smoke. We were told basically to not touch anything. It took them about 6 weeks to start cleaning. So they left our house soaking wet, food on the table. It got to the point where we're wondering if we're going to have maggots in there. It's, crazy. Your house is standing there and you're not allowed to walk in and they're not doing anything. Once they appointed builders, the builders couldn't start. They couldn't start because it turned out insurance has not obtained some sort of a drying certificate. It then took them months to obtain that. At that point, the builder said, "We're very sorry, we can't take this on. We have other jobs. We would love to work on this project, but we don't know when." Then LV told me that they don't have any other builders available and that we could get a cash settlement that they would not disclose a value of and find our own builders. I told them, well, that's very interesting, but A, winter is coming. Where will I find builders? And B, how much money are you offering? I need to tell potential builders how much I can spend. They wouldn't disclose that. They found new builders who came in and again took weeks from our understanding of back and forth between LV and them as to what work is actually supposed to be done, the house was more damaged than to begin with. All our doors were warped. All our floors were now absolutely beyond saving. So the second builder says that the little bits and pieces that the first one started doing is done completely wrong. They have to rip it all out. LV are kind of avoiding us. It became a full-time job chasing them. And I think they were just trying to wait us out, basically. So we hired our own representation. So you have a loss adjuster, which, Katie, correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand that adjuster works for the insurer to get their costs as low as possible. And then you can get a loss assessor who represents you. So we went down the loss assessor route, who was baffled, basically saying that, yeah, this was a small project. There's absolutely no reason for them to be taking now a year of doing no works. We hoped having representation is going to actually lift the stress from us. As you can imagine, me and my husband are at each other's throats, going through arguments of you should have said this, you should have said that, you should have emailed them, you should have called. Why are we in this position? Our friends and family are now all involved. Some of them saying, oh no, you just wait them out. Others saying, this is ridiculous, sue them. But there's only so much you can do, right? We had insurance, so somebody more competent can deal with this. So now a year has passed and LV stopped paying our accommodation. They basically threaten us that we need to start playing nice and, I don't know, agree to whatever they're not offering, or they will no longer pay our accommodation. We get an email saying our liability has ended, which is in direct contradiction to our policies. In your policy, you have an amount that you're entitled to spend on temporary accommodation, and we are nowhere near that. So I contact the MP. I go to Citizens Advice. I start contacting lawyers. Our MP gets involved. Magically, accommodation is being paid again, and they pretend that absolutely no, never happened. It doesn't matter that we have emails where they say we will no longer pay you. And they agree to the one and only Teams call. At that point, we're talking about March 2025, where we go on and the LV team go on and Allianz Group team go on and our representation. And it seems positive. We don't have huge hopes, but it seems like we have made progress. They have agreed to appoint for us to appoint an independent surveyor, because by now they had two building teams say completely different things, different scopes of work. They agree that this independent surveyor will run a tender and basically get quotes from builders, and they will get to choose one and we can start work. They continue paying our accommodation, and then they pretend the call never happened. About 2 weeks after the call, we find out that they have either fired or moved to a different department with immediate effect everybody who was on that call. Despite there being minutes, notes, emails exchanged, it's ridiculous. You know, we all attended business calls. We all know that these things don't just disappear. Calls are recorded, meetings are monitored. There's evidence.
There's a big difference between the amount that the surveyor said it would cost and the amount that LV is happy to pay. Is that right?
Correct. The surveyor and the quotes from the builders came to around £80,000, within a few thousand between the companies. The LV team have, after us requesting a final response, threatening with the ombudsman, offered us around 50K. They said they appointed their own surveyor who has never attended the property. They didn't want to share any of the paperwork. When we forced them to, it turned out that their numbers are completely off. The square meterage of our house is wrong, the number of windows, doors. I don't know what house they surveyed, but definitely not mine. And their approach is take it or leave it. Here's the money, sue us, is basically all the correspondence we get from them. They stop paying our accommodation. Basically, we finish our building policy allowance, even though all the delays are caused by them. And we have a second policy with them on the contents, which also provides us with temporary accommodation, but they just point blank refuse to pay us out on that. So we are now in summer 2025. We finish our rental arrangement with the house because we can't pay a mortgage, a rental, 2 council taxes, 2 sets of bills, and so on. We couch surf for a while. We get friends and family to help us do what we can with the house in half a budget that we need. We submit our cases to the ombudsman. We get involved with you guys at Which. And now we're in a lovely back and forth about contents, because LV are very happy to send us stuff back, which comes filthy, black, soot damaged. It's ludicrous. I mean, I don't know what they are expecting me to do with it. I can't dispose of it. I refuse to accept any more because I have nowhere to store it. They took inventories initially, and it doesn't seem like the stuff they sent back follows any logic. I don't know what they have, where they have it. Some of it is cleaned and beautiful, pristine. Some of it is black. So now we are trying to get either money for the things that they have destroyed and not fixed for us, or get them to move things closer to us so we can inspect them at a storage facility, or get any sort of movement here. And we're being told things like, oh, it's half term. Well, I'm very happy, LV, you guys can enjoy your half term with your children, whereas I can't because my children don't have beds and sofas. So the saga continues. I don't feel like we're making any progress. It feels very much like pulling teeth. And there's no rhyme or reason. You know, they are a huge company. It would be cheaper for them to stop dealing with me than to continue paying for storage, going through ombudsman, potentially going through courts. Why?
And the many months of rent that they've had to pay for as well. I mean, I'm so sorry to hear that you've been through all of this. It really is shocking. It sounds so messy. I mean, Katie, what do you make of all of this? Like, we're shaking our heads in here, but it's just beyond belief, isn't it?
I mean, these are the stories that just break my heart. As a mum, your kids don't have beds, and I'm just thinking about all those sooty soft toys and how devastated my son would be if his teddies hadn't been cleaned and got back to him. And gosh, your baby's never been home, right?
Correct. Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine, Kaja, the impact that's had on you at a time when you more than ever, that security of your home is so important, that, very instinctive nesting desire. And everything there tells me that, according to the regulations, they should have been treating you with extra care. They should have been really going out of their way to look after you. And in reality, what they've done is the exact opposite of that, almost. They've put every possible hurdle in your way.
Left you very much in the dark by the sounds of it,
Absolutely. I mean, it's... And the thing that I find so frustrating, the thing that keeps me going, fighting for this, when here that involves late nights writing long legal documents. It's a funny sort of fighting problems, isn't it? But what keeps us going here is well, it's just not right. It's not right that that's how people are being treated. And yes, the insurer's at fault here. But also, let's be clear, this is a really highly regulated industry with rulebooks that stretch to thousands of pages that are designed to stop this sort of problem, to make sure nobody has to face this. And what's the point of all that work? I equally contributed to some work developing those rules, as did my colleagues here at Which. What's the point? If nothing's going to happen when these companies don't play by those rules, if they're not held to account on it, because I'm in awe of you, Kaja, in the way that you've continued to fight your corner. So many people would have given up by now. And we know people do give up, and then they're left out of pocket as well as having faced all that stress. But what is Which here for if not to fight for people in these situations? So, yeah, we've ruffled some feathers with this super complaint, but hearing stories like yours reminds me why we're doing it and why it's so important, we continue to push this through. I hope it's also a wake-up call to the FCA that, This is why this matters.
Well, I really hope that you get the resolution that you deserve for you and your family. We'll have to check back in with you, as I'm sure you will be anyway. But thank you so much for joining us, Kaja.
Yeah, thank you, Kaja. Your story is so powerful in illustrating why this matters. I know it's not easy to share, so really thank you for taking the time.
Well, again, thank you to Kaja for joining us. And it was, such a heartbreaking story to hear. Well, now, I do have LV's response in front of me, which I have to read. So LV says, we do all we can to settle claims and repair damage as quickly as possible. We have conducted a thorough investigation of this case and are satisfied that the delays were caused by disputes with contractors over additional work that were outside the scope of this claim. A payment was issued for the settlement of the building's reinstatement due to the policyholder not accepting our offer to use LV General Insurance contractors to repair the property. Payments were also made towards alternative accommodation. Now, Katie, then, what happens next? It's quite hard to move on from that story, but looking forward, then, what next?
We wait. It's the long and short of it, really. I mean, we wait for the 90 days to be up. The FCA might respond before. As I say, they've got a lot to get through, so we'll see whether that's realistic. We wait for them to come back, and then the team here at Which HQ, all our experts, are sitting and waiting to get their hands on that reply. We will analyse it. We will work out whether we think what the FCA are proposing to do is satisfactory or not, and we'll then take it from there. Hopefully, they will agree with some of our recommendations that we've made, the things we think they need to look into more closely. Hopefully they'll do more to hold the industry to account. But if they don't, we're not giving up. I think it's fair to say that, you can't listen to stories like those and be willing to let go of this. So we'll see. We'll cross that bridge.
And hopefully we'll have you back on the podcast then. I'm sure we will. And for listeners wondering how they might be able to get involved, we have a petition as well, don't we? Which we'll put a link to in the description of today's show. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Katie. And again, thank you to Kaja. And we'll have to watch this space and catch up with you in a few months.
I look forward to it. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to this podcast from Which, the UK's consumer champion. You can find plenty more advice about what we discussed today in the show notes. There you'll also find a link to become a Which member for 50% off the usual price, an offer exclusively available to you, our podcast listeners. Joining Which will not only give you access to our product reviews, our app, one-to-one personalised buying advice, and every issue of Which magazine across the year, but you'll also be helping us to make life simpler, fairer and safer for everyone. Don't forget to hit subscribe wherever you're listening. That way you'll be notified whenever we release a new episode of Which Money, Which Shorts, or any other podcast that we make for you. And if you want to get in touch with us, then follow us on social media at Which UK or drop us an email to podcast@which.co.uk. See you next time.